lab had never before found such high glyphosate levels in human food. So that is highly concerning.
You've just tuned into Rebel Wellness Podcast, your resource for realigning and revitalizing your health and well-being. I'm your host, Kaylee, also known as Coach Kales. I'm a holistic health educator, certified nutritionist, and fitness professional of nearly a decade. I'm stoked to have you with us. You just joined a community of amazing souls who are ready to break free from the confines of the often outdated and confusing health advice all around us. Living in a world overwhelmed by quick fix diets and unrealistic beauty and body standards, us rebels stand for change. If you're like me, you're exhausted with the confusion and polarization plaguing the social media health scene. My mission is to empower you to step beyond today's diet culture, adopt a holistic health approach paired with the foundations of science for lasting, well-rounded wellness. Through teaching you how to tune in and embrace your mind, body, and soul, we'll reject one-size-fits-all solutions, realigning you on a better path that honors your unique needs and values. With new episodes weekly, this podcast is your sanctuary for deep wellness exploration, featuring expert advice, real-life stories, and a true commitment to your growth. Your journey to better health and simplicity in life begins now. Let's jump right in. Welcome back to the show, Rebel. I am so glad you are here joining us with another awesome episode of Hot Take Summer. If you are new to the show, this is my series in the summertime where I spend some time discussing my hot take on a variety of current popular health trends, fads, and so much more. So today I'm doing a more proper hot take style of discussion, meaning a little more brief and straight to the point around several different nutrition chats that I've been seeing kind of bopping around lately on the wellness social media scene. And it's definitely some things that a ton of my community has been reaching out to me, asking my thoughts on. So I was like, you know what? This is a perfect time to talk about it because I'm sure they are not the only ones. So today we're going to discuss kind of the health concerns around items like Costco Rotisserie chicken, one of our all-time favorites for all of us Costco girlies, and especially going to spend some time chatting about the recent buzz in the, not the gluten-free, low pesticides, low herbicides world of the staggering amounts of chemicals that were discovered in the Banza chickpea pasta. If you have been living under a rock, if you're part of the nutrition world, this is a real big deal. We have actually been kind of exposing the dark side to our kind of monocrop culture here in the US. I'm going to talk more about that later. I know in the episode, I believe it was last Hot Take Summer, I discussed about Roundup, glyphosate, talking about are these chemicals, it's kind of in the gluten-free discussion, are these chemicals something to be concerned about? So today I'm going to give you the real down and dirty about how I feel, what I've researched, what I've seen, more than just how I feel. But how I feel has kind of become a conglomeration of what I've seen in the field as well as mixed with the research I've done. So I think that this is a great conversation for you to pop in today. If this is your first time to the show, welcome to the show. And I hope that today's conversation is a little bit eye-opening for you. And we touch on a little bit of topics that I have whole other more in-depth episodes on, like PFAs, aka forever chemicals, and like I just said, the glyphosate, which is the main active concerning ingredient in the herbicide and pesticide, as it's been named, for Roundup, used in our agriculture for our larger crops. And so check those episodes out if you kind of want to learn a little bit more after you get through this hot take episode. But I think that it's really important that you remember that you should always kind of look into what works the best for you. I know that, saying you need to do gluten-free and grass-fed and perfectly clean and non-GMO and yada yada is not always accessible for everyone. So I do want to acknowledge that, if your better choice of your pasta options between like Bertolli and Banza is the Banza because you get a little bit more protein out of the chickpea pasta, go for it. Maybe you have a gluten allergy, something like that. And again, you have a tighter budget, Banza, still go for it. Any of those kind of things, or the Costco rotisserie chicken, if that is what makes some level of nourishment more accessible to you, I'm all here for it. So I hope that you don't think, as you listen to any of the conversations I have on this podcast, especially ones like today, that I'm shaming those choices. I just want you to be more well educated and make those decisions with discernment, because now you kind of are, given the tools to better navigate, like, should I just cook my own rotisserie chicken at home, or baked chicken, or crock pot or something like that, versus buying these rotisserie chickens and whatnot from Costco, for example. But we're going to talk a little bit more about that here in a moment. First, I would love to invite you to come join our social medias at Rebel Wellness Podcast on Instagram, as well as at Kaylee Loren. That is my nutrition coaching page. You're going to get a lot of great nuggets of wellness wisdom off of that one, as well as come join my newsletter off CoachKales.com. I also have a ton of amazing downloads for free that you should get your hands on if you like my approach to health and wellness. I've been a long-time fitness professional as well as a nutritionist, so I have a little mixture of both of those things available for you and resources. So go ahead and check out CoachKales.com if you would like to join my wellness newsletter. It is one time a month. It is not spammy. It's a great one, and I hope that you enjoy it if you do join. But all right, let's go ahead and jump into this hot take. Okay, I'm gonna first tackle the Costco rotisserie chicken because it's a little bit shorter of a conversation and it's a little more intuitive and straight to the point, I would say. So the hot take is hotter. Sidebar, real quick. My dog is sleeping in the room with me while I record this. His name is Koa, and he sometimes barks in his sleep or makes weird noises and burps. Like, he is a weirdly noisy little dog. And so if you hear him in the background, that's exactly what that was. Okay, so Costco rotisserie chicken. Costco is everywhere. It's all around the planet, honestly. And so I'm not sure which country is actually the one where the chicken is bought the most, but I do know that Costco slangs a lot of rotisserie chickens. I mean, if you've ever been to Costco and have not had one of the rotisserie chickens, I would be very surprised. My family used to have them as a staple whenever we slide through. It's a really easy grab and go protein, always tasty. Most people like chicken, so there's that aspect to it. It's like a low barrier of entry. But in 2022, just for a random fact, they sold approximately 117 million rotisserie chickens. And that's 11 million more than 2021. Isn't that insane? That's a lot of freaking chicken. That's a lot of freaking chicken. So I would say that is definitely, I think it is their like number one food item sold through Costco. It's a very popular item. And it has been noted on the wellness scene that many Costco's have switched from their kind of classic plastic clamshelly type holding thing. I don't know what the term would be for it, but it had the black plastic bottom, the clear plastic top, and a little handle. That's been like the classic packaging for their rotisserie chickens for years, like ever since I was little. And they recently changed it to plastic bags. So this has been concerning for a lot of people because, as we know, different types of plastic, or we may not know, as you should know, different types of plastic will contain different plastic chemicals, many of them in the category of PFAs, which we call forever chemicals. So these are chemicals that get into your body through what we ingest or what we put on our skin, and they stay there forever. They never leave the body. A lot of people are not 100% sure what those chemicals will do long term. It is known to some extent that they have properties that can cause hormonal imbalances. We call those endocrine disruptors. They're part of environmental toxins, aka, things that we're not necessarily supposed to be exposed to that are being exposed to us, especially nowadays, in higher levels than ever before. And we're finding out that they do, in fact, impact our body and its functions, all the way from, just messing with your estrogen levels to cancer and disease and a whole lot of different things. So we really want to be paying attention to these chemicals from my position, because I think if we underestimate them, that's usually when we get got. So I would say that the fact that Costco has changed their packaging to plastic bags is concerning, especially because, as you may have learned from episode 41, that's my episode on PFAs. Go and listen to that one later if you'd like to learn more. I also give really good tips on how you can avoid PFAs in that episode as well, so definitely recommend. But if you heat things, so the point of PFAs, let me backtrack real quick. The point of PFAs are that they help keep things like waterproof or sealed, kind of the same thing as waterproof, or resistant to being penetrated, essentially. So they are necessary for most plastic products, and they're part of plastic products, because most of the time we use plastic products to seal things in or keep things out, right? And so we oftentimes will find them the most in a lot of these products that house foods that have liquid droppings or anything like that. Where this gets concerning is the fact that when you heat these plastic items, it makes it more susceptible to drop those chemicals into whatever the food product is, or whatever's around it, honestly, that can absorb it. As well as when you get oil involved, it can also dilute and pull those chemicals out as well. So if you add heat and you add oil, you're going to start pulling those forever chemicals out of whatever the plastic is and putting it into the food product. So this is why a lot of people have said the worst exposures we get to forever chemicals, like commonly nowadays, is to-go food, because they use styrofoam, cheap plastic, any of those things, like those plastic tall containers for like soup. All of those things are concerning, because even if they have that nice rating number on the bottom, a lot of the times they still are getting another type of forever chemical into your food. And then that's when we get all these little microplastics and nanoplastics and all these different things that are very concerning long term, as they are not leaving the body and they are disrupting our organs. So that's the biggest thing to kind of think about if your Costco did change to the plastic bags. I will say that it is very notable to think about the fact that those plastic cloches, there you go, that's the word, the plastic cloches that used to house the rotisserie chickens before, were also not really safe either. I would say they were most likely not as bad as these baggies, because the baggies have a lot more contact to the chicken. The cloches had a different type of plastic on the bottom. That's why it was a black type that was thicker and a little hardier, and the top was the thinner and clear. That means that those types have different chemicals, they have different properties. That little triangle thing with a number in it on the bottom, it should be on most plastic items, tells you the rating of that plastic. So I'm not going to go into that too much with you today, but I would say there's really easy guides online that you can look up to kind of get a better idea. However, it is notable that the plastic bags actually don't have any number on them. And I had stumbled upon during my research in this, as I developed my opinion, somebody had inquired with Costco and asked, what is the plastic number for these bags? And they never got back to them. So they called and they talked to them and they said, we don't actually have record of what type of plastic. We can't tell you. We don't know. And I'm like, oh, that is highly concerning. So I would say if your Costco has the plastic bags on the rotisserie chicken, I would just pass on that one, because at least we know with the plastic cloche one, there is a rating number on there, and less of the chicken is touching as much of the plastic, especially the lower rated plastic, which is usually the clear that's on the top, that isn't really touching the chicken. It is still exposed to the heat and the oils. So, of course, it is most likely definitely still leaching PFAs into the chicken. But again, you make that own choice on your own. But I would say that my best tip would be I would avoid the plastic bag ones, just due to the fact that we don't really know yet what is actually making up that plastic bag. And so we could be getting highly exposed to a lot more than we think. The other thing that's notable too is that the chicken that Costco uses from their site and how they've described it publicly is injected with phosphates. And that's an additive that is usually used to keep it juicy while it roasts. And it is a bundle of chemicals that unfortunately are known to be arterial toxins when ingested frequently. So if you're somebody who's been consistently eating these rotisserie chickens from Costco for weeks on weeks on weeks or years or months or whatever, you may want to consider slowing your roll on that. Look into maybe roasting your own chicken at home or finding a local barbecue spot or something like that that does it for you, that doesn't put it in plastic and doesn't brine it in phosphates and such. So this is really important to consider, because also what is done to the product, especially in this case, like the bird, before it is roasted, also can play a big role in what you are being exposed to. And honestly, guys, it's really important to understand that when it's $5, always, it's an item that has always stayed $5. They're going to cut corners to make sure they can continue to provide you with that product and as consistent as possible. And a lot of people have noted it tasting funnier, or odd times it'll taste weird. You can't imagine that they're getting a huge profit off of these birds. $5 for a whole chicken rotisserie. Like, I get why people are all about it. It's a very strategic way to get protein, which again, that's why I'm like not necessarily saying stop buying them, that they're horrible for you, but they definitely still come with concerns and risks, especially if you ingest them frequently. So that's very important to kind of know, because it is a little bit risky when it comes to mass produced food items in general. And that's going to be part of a good lead in into the Banza pasta conversation. But I do just want to make sure to reiterate, when it comes to the Costco rotisserie chicken, I'm sure I didn't even cover some of the other chemicals and such that are involved in these, but the major ones that I think you should be concerned about are for sure the PFAs, which will be coming from the fact that it's packaged in plastic under heat with oils and water. That's always how you're going to be pulling these harmful chemicals from their casing. Okay, so how food is processed, cooked, and packaged really matters when it comes to your harmful chemical exposure and respective levels of those chemicals. Okay, take that to heart. Do with it what you want. Again, I'm not going to tell you to stop buying them altogether, but that also goes for the pre-pulled chicken that they sell kind of vacuum packed in the cold case. It's the same chicken. It's their rotisserie chicken. It's just already been deboned and all that stuff for you. Therefore, and it's also sealed in a vacuum packed bag, which is also plastic. We don't know if the chicken was hot when they pulled it, and if that heat, or if you reheat it in that plastic. Some people do that. They just put it in the microwave like that. You are going to be getting those PFAs, aka forever chemicals, into your food. Okay, everything that you cook in plastic is going to have the risk of leaching it. I just want to really drive that home, because that is the main thing you have to understand when it comes to food and plastic. I always recommend, like what I do, my best advice would be to always transfer it into a glass dish, a ceramic dish, microwave safe, that is not plastic based, possibly even not silicone based. I would err towards glass and ceramic, because they have a much lower chance of leaching anything, because they are sealed and they stand up to heat much better. Okay. Obviously, you cannot put metal into your microwave. But again, yeah, if you are cooking, you will probably want to err towards stainless steel, hammered steel, or cast iron. Those are your most ideal pans. They do take a little bit of skill. There's fantastic resources on YouTube, just take a little time. It's going to be worth it. Or if you're cooking with nonstick pans, you're going to want to err towards companies that specifically create non-toxic, low PFA to no PFA sealant that helps it be nonstick. The major thing that makes those pans problematic is scratching them. So you always want to be using nonstick pans, safe utensils on them. The moment you start to scratch them is when you cut through that protective layer, and then those chemicals can now leach into your food. So that's an important thing. Look at your nonstick pans later after this, see if they're all scratched up. toss them out, donate them, whatever you want to do, and get yourself some new ones. I had a friend recently who actually asked me about this, and I think one of the main brands that I know that does non-toxic pans is Caraway Home. I'm not sponsored by them. I don't have any discount codes, unfortunately, but I do know that that is a common, popular non-toxic cookware brand. So looking specifically for those is going to be your best bet. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into this conversation about glyphosate, which is also known as Roundup, in food, specifically Banza pasta. Let me just come out of the gate saying specifically I was so disappointed when I had learned about this. Because as a nutritionist, through not only my schooling, but just through like taste testing things myself for my clients and all of that, I was kind of astounded to find out about this whole situation going on with the glyphosate levels in Banza pasta. Banza products in general, I would assume, because they're all made from the same source, chickpeas. So if you don't know what the buzz specifically was all about, it was found recently by a group called Moms Across America who test, a lot of these different products to make sure things are doing what they say on their labels, because there's a lot of kids who have celiac or, very specific chemicals do physically affect them. And trust moms. Moms know what's going on with their kids. It doesn't matter how many scientists want to who have been thrown money at them by these major companies, being like, hush all these people, make people seem dumb, make sure that you say like, oh no, that's not possibly true. You can't blah blah blah. I have a lot of interesting insight on that to say from my own clients when I had first posted about this. But Moms Across America did a gluten-free food pesticide testing, and the lab had never before found such high glyphosate levels in human food. So that is highly concerning. The findings were most likely due to the fact that in the US, we use what's called a pre-harvest drying agent when you are harvesting these kind of grain-like or all the grain-like products, aka typically what we would refer to as monocrops, because they are major crops that provide for a ton of different food items, and they're usually grain based. So you're going to see that with soy, wheat, corn, chickpeas, etc. So in this case, Banza pasta is made from chickpeas. That's why it touts such an impressive label of 20 grams of protein per serving and a good amount of fiber. So this is a very interesting situation because we want to be aware that though certain herbicides and pesticides have been deemed safe by the FDA and a variety of other boards as being perfectly fine and certain levels are not a big deal at all, we have to listen to the human experience because that's what's really going to be telling as to, is it actually a problem? I have seen throughout my entire career, and you can see through history, so many things that were like, it's not bad, it's fine. I mean, hello, cigarettes, tobacco, all of these things that now we're just like, yeah, no, that's definitely super bad, and they knew it was super bad. I mean, speaking of the PFAs, that was one of the bigger things that was kind of crazy when I had first learned about forever chemicals, that Teflon had actually known that forever chemicals were extremely toxic and problematic to human bodies early on, because they had discovered that pregnant women that were working on their line that were helping coat the pans with the Teflon, forever chemical sealant, were having babies born with severe defects. And I believe some had stillborns. And they basically paid them hush money, and they kept the research that came out about the toxicity levels of their product like hush hush for years. I think it was anywhere from 15 to 20 years. If you listen to my episode 41, you will know exactly what it was because I talk about it there, but I can't remember off the top of my head now. But it is crazy to just know that there are unfortunately, deep pockets that will always be able to manipulate narratives until the truth just pushes itself out. And unfortunately, that typically happens by a large collective of people's shared experience. And we are starting to absolutely see people waking up to their reactions to Banza pasta. And like I was saying earlier, I would always recommend this pasta to a lot of my clients when we would be trying to discover how to, what we would call protein stack, where you try to put as many high protein things together as possible to build really protein rich, protein dense meals to keep you satiated, support your muscle growth, yada, yada, all that great stuff. And so when I read this, I was like, ooh, what a disappointment. And the amount of messages I got back on my DMs about what I had posted about this was very telling as well. I mean, if in my small community, a ton of people are heartbroken, I can imagine across the world, if people actually do care about it, as they should, that this would be massively disappointing, because it is. And so something I wanted to point out is that a lot of people are kind of split on whether or not glyphosate is a big issue for, health implications. And it's kind of weird because the US EPA, so the Environmental Protection Agency, classified glyphosate as quote unquote not likely to be carcinogenic, aka cancer causing, to humans. However, the WHO, the World Health Organization, and the International Agency for Research on Cancer have published a completely opposing statement to that. So I'm like, I don't know who I would trust more, except I do know who I would trust more. Probably the people who are looking out for the best health outcome for the humans in the world, versus a very well known to be often corrupt US government agency. So sadly, I do believe that, especially based on, initially there was a big review of scientific literature in 2015, there is sufficient evidence that there is a lot of carcinogenic capacity of glyphosate in animals and in humans. So even though it has an ability to induce DNA damage and oxidative stress, which, if you don't know, fun little fact, cancer is simply just damaged DNA that is not getting taken out of your body through your body's natural detox pathways. We would call that cellular autophagy. That is what, you might have heard a lot of people talk about with fasting and stuff like that. Basically, the importance of when you're in that rest and digest phase, when you're sleeping throughout night time and you are hopefully fasted, so hopefully not having eaten for at least that whole spread of 10 to 12 hours, you are benefiting from allowing your body to focus on what the heck is in my body that isn't supposed to be there, versus hyper focusing on, okay, we ate something again. Oh, we ate late. Now I've got to digest this. If you're somebody who's a chronic late night eater, I would highly recommend you consider cutting that back, or fast in the morning if you are always eating later, and start your eating window later in the day. Natural fasting, not specific fasting. So that's why most people kind of say don't eat between the hours of 7 and 7 or 8 and 8. That's a pretty natural pattern for most humans anyways. So I know for sure I don't like eating after 8 because it messes with my sleep quality. And I know it messes with my gut, and it obviously is messing with cellular autophagy, that process that happens when you're sleeping. And so that's the easiest kind of recommendation if you're trying to reduce, your DNA damage capability to proliferate, because that is what cancer is. Cancer is damaged DNA proliferating and causing issues in your body. So that was a little side tangent, but I think it's an important one that is a nice little hot take to add into this, because I think a lot of people think of cancer as this ominous bug that just gets in your body and then takes over. But in reality, we actually have a huge play in how we influence our risk for cancer by our lifestyle habits, what we eat, that is communication to our body and its processes, as well as, of course, there's genetic components, but genetics load the gun and lifestyle pulls the trigger. That's the common phrase that you'll always hear in the nutrition world, because it is true. We have actually seen it play out at a cellular level. Okay, so let's get back into this whole glyphosate thing, because I think there are some interesting things to note about why glyphosate is problematic in your food. So, one of the major ones is that there has now become a link to very specific cancers, like including non Hodgkin lymphoma. And there's also been a lot of research that is supportive of how glyphosate has an impact on our hormonal balance. So, again, the endocrine system. However, the really interesting angle that they're starting to research more and more is the influence that glyphosate has on our gut microbiome. So, you guys have probably been hearing just a ton of different stuff about gut health more and more and more lately. And like I've mentioned in past episodes before, it is actually because we have only been able to research the gut bacteria, the gut microbiome, since early 2000s. That's the first time we got microscopes that could actually study the gut bugs, the little bugs in our gut. And so it is new research in the scientific world because it's only 2024. So it's not been very many decades of being able to research the gut. So gut health, I would say I have already seen things change and change and change and how we understand it. So what we understand for right now, though, is that it is very important to manage and maintain, making sure that we don't lose that microbial biodiversity, because that is extremely influential into how we digest and absorb nutrients, aka assimilation of nutrients, and how we make sure that we are fighting pathogens, including viruses, bacterial things, and avoiding inflammation in our intestinal lining. That is one of the major ways that we are finding people end up with Hashimoto's disease of the thyroid, so Hashimoto's thyroiditis, because in a variety of different autoimmune diseases, starting from the gut, because we're learning that pathogens and little food particles and things that are not meant to get into our bloodstream are because of chronic inflammation in our gut. So listening to how food and different chemical exposure influences our individual body is so key, guys, because it can really make or break your gut. And then your gut will make or break your life and your health long term. I can't remember who said it. It was a very old philosopher, I believe, who said our everything to do with our life begins and ends in our gut. Something like that. Don't quote me. I should have probably looked it up, but it just came to mind right now. And essentially, it's absolutely accurate. Everything to do with our health really falls back on our gut, because I mean, majority of our serotonin is created in our gut, so if you have an unhealthy gut, you're going to have an unhealthy mind and therefore an unhealthy body. You cannot have a healthy body with an unhealthy mind. Those things are hand in hand. So paying attention to how certain foods interact with your gut is key. And I say that because this is directly correlated to the Banza pasta. So several years ago, one of my clients and I have noticed that whenever we would eat Banza pasta, our guts would be all messed up. At first, we thought it was the other additives to it. Later discovered that the only underlying common denominator was the Banza. So I naturally stopped eating Banzas frequently. And let me tell you, I ate Banza a lot. Like, especially when it first came out. I don't know if because it got bigger and bigger, like the quality changed, how they sourced it changed. I wouldn't be surprised because, as companies grow, they need to source larger amounts of the product. Therefore, they often go for what is the cheapest and the most voluminous. And so that often comes from monocropped crops, large crops, okay? And so that's when we're going to see a ton of glyphosate usage, because the least amount of waste you can pull from a crop is going to be the highest yield for profit. So you really want to do whatever is quote unquote legally possible to have as much yield from that crop as possible. I get from a financial statement why that happens and why they do it. However, for our health, we have to kind of be, again, using discretion and understanding that that can mean more exposures to these harmful chemicals, and absolutely more exposure for sure to things like glyphosate. So, like I said, not only was I starting to realize this, or my client, more people, especially when I have posted about the study's findings on the social media the other day, I got a bunch of responses, and a few of them I will read a couple back to you. One person goes, "This is criminal. I stopped eating these because they for sure made me feel sick. Thanks for the FYI." Another person said, "We literally just had this camping this weekend and everyone commented on their gut hurting. And I thought it was just the chickpeas." Another person said, "Read this and I was also like, I knew that's why I never felt good eating it." And one more, wow. Now I get why the last few times I made pasta with Banza, I actually barfed. I thought it was the meat I added in. But then I ate it again without meat and I was fine." Wasn't fine. So all that to say, even from the small little group of people, it seems as though our bodies are telling us, like our bodies are speaking volumes right now by how it's reacting to these Banza pastas. And as I deduced down as much as I could, here is my best advice to what you should do when it comes to choosing chickpea pastas or any of these other ones. You're gonna want to go, and like I said earlier in the episode, I know it may not always be accessible for everyone, but if you really want to reduce your exposure potential to things like Roundup, aka glyphosate, in your pastas, you're gonna want to go for organic non-GMO because Roundup is not allowed to be used on organic. And again, like I talked about in my previous episode recently on Hot Take Summer about organic crops can't be planted on soil that has been using these chemicals for at least the last 3 years. So you're going to greatly reduce, not completely eliminate. Unfortunately, we cannot completely eliminate our exposure to glyphosate by choosing these products, but we can significantly reduce it. And when I had done research about the organic versus non-organic, that was something that I found in several studies, which was kind of remarkable, was the amount of these different herbicides and pesticides in the urine of people who ate conventionally grown vegetables and fruits and those who didn't was significant, like extremely significant. So while you may not be able to get everything perfectly clean, you're doing the best you can to reduce it as much as possible by choosing organic and non-GMO processed foods. And so that would be my best advice, is if you do want to continue consuming chickpea pastas, and there are definitely organic ones on the market, I would highly recommend you err towards that, because we do know now that chickpeas, soy, wheat, and corn, and all of those different major monocrops do use glyphosate. So there's always going to be residue of glyphosate on it. We don't know quite how much. However, we do know now, unfortunately, for wherever the chickpeas are being sourced in the US for Banza, there is an exorbitant amount of it on that pasta, and odds are quite strong it will wreak havoc on your gut. And you really want to protect those little buggies. You really want to keep them as healthy as you can, because again, microbial diversity is extremely key, from everything from your mental health to your immune system to your nutrient absorption and more. Disease prevention. That's another important one. All right, guys. So that is my hot take on these two topics. I hope they were helpful for you to kind of break down and digest, unintended, a little bit better all the kind of potential risks that you will want to know about when it comes to Costco rotisserie chicken choices and Banza pasta. I hope that was helpful. Share this episode with somebody you think would benefit. If there's somebody you know who eats proliferative amounts of Banza pasta and you're concerned that it's messing with their gut, or somebody who is just a Costco chicken slanger, loves their Costco chicken. I used to definitely do that when I was a lot younger, but there's just always was something weird to me about, the plastic and the heat under the light and the chicken just kind of cooking in that junk. But all right, as always, celebrate your strength and nourishment, walk with confidence, and I will catch you next week on another episode of Rebel Wellness. Hey Rebel, I just want to say a huge thank you for tuning in and sharing this space with us. Before we sign off, I've got some exciting ways for you to stay connected and to take your wellness journey even further with me. First up, if you haven't already, make sure to swing by CoachKales.com and sign up for our newsletter. It's your go-to source for the latest episodes, exclusive content, and a whole lot more wellness goodness delivered straight to your inbox. Check out the show notes for those high quality tips on nutrition, fitness, and just overall well-being. Follow us on Instagram at Rebel Wellness Podcast and my flagship page at Kaylee Loren. We're all about building a community where we can share, inspire, and grow together. So I would love to see you there. Now, if you're looking to reset and realign after a vacation, a hectic work season, or just because you feel like it's time for a healthful cleanse, I've got something super special for you, and it's 100% free. Head over to stan.store/kales and download my free realignment detox guide. You can also find it at coachkale.com in the freebies section. I'm sharing my unique holistic approach to help you cut back inflammation, improve your skin, and even shed some excess weight with this guide. So trust me, you're gonna love it. Go download it for free now. But last but not certainly least, if you've got a burning health question you'd like answered on the show, or if you're curious about my one-on-one remote coaching or group courses, don't hesitate to visit my website and reach out to me there, or hello@kayleeloren.com is my best email for contacting me. I am here to support you on your journey to wellness, so do not feel afraid to reach out. All right, Rebel, catch you on the next episode.